The scent of eucalyptus still clung to the vase I gave my daughter last Christmas, as her voice cut through the hallway. She's a burden we'll soon be free of. Still, I set the envelope down beside it, the one marked Ava's Act Fund. Hands steady, heart silent. As her husband chuckled low, too familiar, too final, the lemon oil thickened, sharp as the years I spent keeping them afloat. The same polished silence I once called love now reeked of eviction. That's when I knew. My daughter hadn't lost me, she'd spent me. So I left the check behind and rewrote the will. Before we begin, may I ask, where in this big, beautiful world are you listening from? It's always a quiet honor to know who's sharing this space. Drop it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. The house still smelled like eucalyptus and lemon oil, like it always did after Hannah cleaned. Maggie stood at the threshold, holding a white envelope with Ava's name neatly written in blue ink. She'd meant to slip in, drop off the ACT prep check, and leave before anyone noticed. But a voice, Hannah's, floated from the back hallway, sharp with laughter. She's a burden we'll soon be free of. The words landed before Maggie could blink. She stilled, her fingers tightening around the envelope. A pause, then Matthew's voice joined in, lower but clear. Once she's in assisted living, we can breathe again. Their laughter twined together like old ropes tightening around her chest. She hadn't meant to eavesdrop. Maggie stared at the frosted glass vase on the console table by the door, the one she'd bought Hannah last Christmas. It had been on clearance. She remembered wrapping it in gold tissue paper, hoping it would make Hannah smile. Her hand hovered over the table now, then slowly lowered the envelope beside the vase. She didn't speak, didn't knock, didn't breathe. She backed out the door, step by silent step, each movement so smooth it felt like muscle memory, like how she used to sneak out of Ava's nursery without waking her. Outside, the autumn air hit like a slap, crisp, cold. Her shoes crunched faintly on the gravel as she walked back to her car. Maggie drove home in silence, one hand gripping the wheel too tightly, the other resting over her ribs, as if to hold in whatever had cracked. No tears came, not yet. At home, the lights felt too bright, the air too still. She didn't take off her coat, just walked to the hall closet, pulled down a worn black ledger from the top shelf, and carried it to the dining table. She hadn't touched it in years. The binding cracked faintly as she opened it. Inside, a decade and a half of scribbles, line items, and notes in tidy cursive. Columns of dates, amounts, descriptions. 2006. Ava's ballet recital, paid costume fee. 2009. Matt's dental bill when insurance lapsed. 2012. Hannah's real estate license renewal, gift. 2017. Down payment bridge loan repaid, circled. Pages of her handwriting chronicling every loan, every gift, every emergency she helped patch for them. Some entries had a question mark. Others had small notes next to them. Promised to repay. Said thank you. No follow-up. She flipped further. Her fingers trembled. 2018. Won $200 for Ava's summer science camp. Hannah forgot to register on time. 2020. Groceries every Friday during lockdown. X'd out $3,000 total. 2021. Mortgage caught up, $7,500 wire transfer. She paused. Her pen had changed colors that year, from blue to black, as if the weight of giving had darkened. Maggie touched the edge of the page, felt the indentation of her past self pressing down too hard. She hadn't been keeping score, not at first, but sometime between Ava's braces and Hannah's third temporary job change, something in her had shifted. She'd started writing it all down, not out of resentment, she told herself then, but out of necessity, to stay sane, to remind herself she wasn't imagining it. That it was always her, catching their fall, and now she was a burden they'd be free of. The sentence circled in her head like a crow. Outside, a wind picked up. A branch scratched against the window like something trying to get in. Or out. She turned the page slowly. Then another. And another. Each line was a wound that had scabbed over and been forgotten. Until tonight. Maggie closed the book halfway through 2023. Her thumb rested on a page where she'd written, Paid for Hannah's furnace repair. She said she'd Venmo. Never did. A faint smile pulled at the corner of her mouth. Not kind, not bitter either, something new. She rose and walked to the kitchen, placed the ledger gently on the counter, then opened the drawer beneath the coffee maker. Inside was a manila folder labeled Estate Plans and Power of Attorney. She pulled it out, set it next to the ledger, then reached for a pen, and drew a single line through one name. The numbers stared up at her like a dare. $138,600. Maggie had written it in small, controlled numbers at the bottom of the ledger's last page. She didn't want it to look angry, just real. There was no rounding, no inflation, no bitterness in the math. She had checked each line 3 times. Tuition payments, preschool deposits, used car down payment, bailout checks disguised as birthday cards. She didn't count the groceries or the gas fill-ups when Hannah had forgotten her wallet. That was charity, but the rest? That was partnership, and it had never been mutual. She shut the ledger gently, like closing a casket. The morning sun had started bleeding through the blinds, a thin line of light cutting across her bare forearm. She was still in yesterday's clothes. She called Sam. He picked up on the second ring. "Hey, Ma. You okay?" She hadn't cried, not once, but hearing his voice stirred something deeper than grief. Not sadness, something heavier. "Can you come by this afternoon?" she said. "Bring the estate binder and Eloise, if she's free." Sam didn't ask questions. "We'll be there by 2. By the time they arrived, Maggie had made coffee and cleared the dining table. The ledger and folder were lined up with exactness. A fresh legal pad sat nearby. She hadn't needed it in years. Today it felt like armor. Eloise kissed her cheek as she walked in. "We came ready." Sam sat down across from Maggie, his jaw tightening slightly when he saw the black ledger. "I haven't seen this since Dad's probate." "It's not probate," Maggie said. "Not yet. But it's time I stopped pretending these numbers don't exist." She slid the page toward him. "That's what I've given them, to the cent, since 2006. Sam skimmed the list, then slowed. His eyes narrowed at the totals. "Jesus, Ma. I didn't mean to tally it. I just needed to understand why I felt so hollow." He glanced at her, then back at the numbers. "Is this with interest?" Maggie almost laughed. "I'm not charging my daughter interest, Sam." "You should." Eloise leaned forward, her voice low and certain. "We're removing them from every corner, every clause, every line." Maggie nodded. "Exactly." Sam reached for the binder, flipping to the tabbed pages she hadn't touched since the year after her husband died. "Living trust, revocable," he murmured. Hannah and Matthew were still secondary beneficiaries. Ava, too, in a tiered clause. "Not anymore," Maggie said. Sam looked up. "She made it clear," Maggie continued, her voice calm. "They're waiting for the version of me that folds neatly into a facility. Out of sight, out of their way. But I'm not going anywhere. Not quietly, and not for free." Eloise arched an eyebrow, her dimple barely visible. "About damn time." Maggie allowed herself a small smile. "I want everything reassigned," she said. "Real estate, accounts, even the antique cabinet. If something should happen to me, stroke, accident, pneumonia, I want them locked out before they even get the call." Sam tapped the folder. "We can move everything into the trust under your sole direction. Update beneficiaries, change medical proxies too." "She's not my emergency contact anymore," Maggie said. "You are." Sam scribbled something on the legal pad. "We'll need to get it notarized." "I'll drive her," Eloise said, already reaching for her keys. Sam tilted his head, then pushed the binder aside. "One thing." Maggie looked up. "This isn't just a paper shift. You sure about all of it?" "No emotion left to undo this later?" Maggie didn't hesitate. "They'll be free all right," she said, voice even. "Free from every cent I ever sent. Every call they didn't return. Every obligation they left me holding like a fire in my hands." Sam leaned back in his chair, nodding slowly. "Then let's take them out of your future." He tore the top page from the legal pad and folded it neatly. "We'll get started today, but I want a clean record. No more shadow favors. If they ask for anything, money, help, errands, you say no." "I will," Maggie said. "You mean it?" "I do." Outside, a car door slammed. Someone across the street. Maggie barely noticed. Inside, the air was changing, no longer stagnant. It carried movement, intention. She rose and walked to the kitchen while Sam and Eloise flipped through forms and dates. She poured a fresh cup of coffee, black this time, no sugar. Her hands were steady, but something was rattling behind her ribs now. Not grief, not relief either. Readiness. Then she paused. On the counter sat her phone, screen still lit from a recent notification. Hannah. Mom, can you cover Ava's second act session too? Forgot to register again. Maggie didn't move, didn't reply. She tapped the message once, then held it until options popped up. Delete, block, silence. Her thumb hovered for a long moment, then she chose silence. For now, the auditorium smelled faintly of floor polish and cinnamon candles. The PTA's attempt at warmth that always felt a little too curated. Folding chairs stretched in perfect rows beneath a banner that read, Fall Youth Recital. Maggie chose the third row, aisle seat. Same as always, but for the first time, her hands were empty. No snack tray balanced on her lap. No sealed envelope with a thank you tucked inside. No donation form folded beneath her purse. Just her and her gloves. The piano on stage gleamed beneath the stage lights. The same one she'd helped raise funds for 3 years ago. That was before she stopped being the woman who fixed things. When the curtains parted, the audience erupted in cheerful applause. Maggie clapped politely, her palms meeting softly, deliberately offbeat. Ava was fourth in the lineup. She walked out in a white dress with a navy ribbon tied around her waist. Too grown now to be the child who used to crawl into Maggie's lap and beg for stories about cardinals in the snow. Maggie felt a twist of something inside her. Love, ache, pride, all braided tight. Ava sat at the piano and began to play. Claire de Lune. The notes shimmered in the air like water reflecting moonlight. Around her, parents whispered and recorded videos. Maggie just watched. No phone, no filter, no smile meant for anyone else. Halfway through the piece, she caught Hannah glancing her way. Maggie met her daughter's eyes for half a second, before looking back to the stage. Hannah's expression faltered, confusion flickering there, a wrinkle where entitlement used to live. When the song ended, the applause surged. Maggie stood with everyone else but didn't call Ava's name, just clapped once, twice, and sat down again. The group photo happened 15 minutes later, near the refreshments table. A sea of cupcakes and juice boxes. Parents crowded together with their kids, laughing too loud, performing joy for one another. "Grandma, come stand with us," Ava called, waving from beside Hannah. Maggie hesitated. She could hear Hannah's clipped whisper, "Mom, just one picture." She stepped into the frame but didn't arrange her smile. When the flash went off, she was the only one not grinning. Hannah scrolled through the shot immediately, her mouth tightening. "She's acting cold," she texted Matthew under the table, thumbs fast, jaw clenched. What's her deal now? Maggie was already walking toward the exit. She waited until the crowd spilled into the parking lot, until the sound of car doors and laughter faded. Ava spotted her near the entrance. "Grandma," the girl ran over, clutching her recital flowers. "Did you like it?" Maggie took her hand, warm and small. "I did, sweetheart. You played beautifully." Ava smiled. "Mom says you're coming to dinner." Maggie shook her head. "Not tonight, but I'm proud of you. Remember that." She brushed a petal from Ava's sleeve and turned toward her car. Ava waved until she couldn't see her anymore. The house felt cleaner that night than it had in years. Not physically, just lighter. She sat at her desk, opened her laptop, and pulled up the credit union portal. Her hands hovered over the keyboard for a long time. Ava T. Callahan. Education Fund current balance, $23,142. 19. Maggie clicked transfer control. The form expanded, waiting for authorization. She typed deliberately, no hesitation in her name, none in the destination. Transfer of custodial rights to minor beneficiary, effective immediately. She added a short note in the memo line. For the one who still says thank you. The system required a second signature. She called Sam. He answered instantly. "Ma? I need your login code," she said. "You're moving it?" "Yes." Directly to Ava. "Yes." There was a pause, then the faint sound of a chair creaking. "Good. I'll finalize it from my end. Sam, I know, he said quietly. You don't owe them explanations. When the confirmation email arrived, the header read, Transfer complete. Joint guardian access revoked. Maggie exhaled slowly. The sound surprised her. It almost resembled a laugh. An hour later, the doorbell rang. Eloise stood outside, coat half buttoned, holding a folder. Sam asked me to drop these by. He filed the freeze. Maggie stepped aside to let her in. All joint accounts tied to Hannah and Matthew are locked, Eloise said, flipping through papers. Mortgage co-signatures, the home equity line, everything. She can't touch a dime without your consent now. Maggie traced the edge of the document, reading each clause. The power of her own name looked foreign there, like someone else's authority she'd finally inherited. Does she know? Not yet, Eloise said, but she will soon. Maggie looked up. The corner of her mouth lifted. Then maybe it's time she learns the cost of silence. Outside, a wind rolled through the street, carrying the brittle scent of November leaves. Inside, Maggie gathered the papers into the folder, pressed the cover flat, and set it beside the black ledger on her desk. 2 volumes of her life, what she'd given and what she'd finally reclaimed. She reached for her phone, glanced at Hannah's unread text thread, and scrolled past it. Instead, she opened a new contact, typed a single name, Ava. Then a short message. Your fund is now yours. Use it well. She hit send. The phone vibrated once, message delivered. Then, after a long still moment, a reply bubble appeared. Ava, thank you, Grandma. I'll make you proud. Maggie's hand tightened on the phone, and a faint warmth flickered through her chest. For the first time in a long while, her yes meant something entirely her own. Outside, headlights swept briefly across the living room wall. A car idled by the curb, Hannah's SUV. She didn't get out, just sat there, engine running, phone glowing blue in her hand. Through the sheer curtains, Maggie watched her daughter's silhouette hesitate, then pull away into the dark. Maggie closed the drapes. Tomorrow, she thought. Tomorrow the silence ends on my terms. The shriek of Hannah's voice echoed off her own kitchen tiles. You've got to be kidding me. She yanked her phone from her ear and stared at the screen as if disbelief alone could reverse what she'd just heard. The HOA treasurer had been polite, almost apologetic but firm. The autopay account connected to their quarterly dues had been disconnected. Owner initiated. No alternate payee listed. No, Hannah muttered, dialing again, this time to the bank. She listened to the hold music for 39 seconds before stabbing the speakerphone off and pacing to the living room. Matthew looked up from the couch. What's going on now? She killed the autopay. Hannah's voice was brittle. That account she linked to our HOA fees. Gone. Just gone. Matthew rubbed the side of his face. That can't be right. She's had that set up since we moved in. Exactly, Hannah said, spinning toward the window. Outside, their lawn was still half covered in leaves. They were supposed to be fine for that next week. Another thing Maggie used to cover without blinking. I'll email Sam, Matthew said finally, pulling out his laptop. Why? I'm going to request Maggie relink her name to the mortgage support account, just temporarily. We can't fall behind on the November payment, Hannah scoffed. Good luck. She won't even answer my texts. Matthew kept typing. If Sam's involved, maybe there's a legal angle we can push. 3 hours later, Sam's reply landed in Matthew's inbox. Subject: Mortgage support access. Matthew, per the grantor's written instruction, all financial affiliations between Maggie Callahan and the parties named in your request have been formally and irrevocably severed. No further inquiries will be responded to. St. Callahan, POA. Matthew read it twice, then again. We're cut off, he said slowly. Hannah didn't respond. She was staring at the framed photo on the fireplace mantel. Last Christmas, Maggie in the middle, Ava in reindeer pajamas. Maggie had brought the matching mugs that year. Cinnamon and nutmeg stirred into hot cocoa. That photo was a different universe now. She changed her locks, Hannah said quietly, still looking at the photo. Ava told me this morning. Said her emergency key didn't work anymore. Matthew stood. She removed the key? She did more than that. That afternoon, Maggie held the new key in her palm for a long time before placing it in the carved wooden dish near her door. The locksmith had come and gone before lunch. Quick, clean work. No emergency access now. Not for Hannah, not for Matthew, just Sam and Ava. And one trusted neighbor. She stepped outside to sweep the porch. The wind had picked up, sharp, biting air that made her cheeks flush. She caught sight of something sticking out of her mailbox. A bright white envelope, no stamp, no postmark. Just her name in Hannah's familiar loops. She didn't open it. Not right away. Inside, she poured tea, sat at the table, and stared at the envelope. She didn't want to guess its contents. Apology? Guilt? A subtle financial plea dressed up as emotional concern? She didn't open it. Instead, she heard footsteps on the walkway. Quieter, lighter. Ava. Maggie opened the door before she could knock. "Hi," Ava said, shifting awkwardly in her hoodie. I was just passing by on the way from debate." Maggie nodded. "Come in." They sat together in the living room. Ava's eyes wandered to the key dish. She noticed the color, brass now, not nickel. "You changed them." Maggie didn't dodge. "I did." Ava twisted her fingers in her lap. "Did something happen?" Maggie tilted her head, considered how much to say. "Some things just end," she said gently. "This one did." Ava swallowed. "Is it because of Mom?" Maggie reached out, resting a hand over Ava's. "It's because of enough. Enough being taken. Enough being overlooked. Sometimes, honey, love needs a lock." Ava didn't reply right away. Then, "Can I still come over?" Maggie's mouth softened. "Always." Later that night, after Ava left with a thermos of hot cider and a quiet hug, Maggie stood at the table again, looking at the envelope. She finally opened it. Inside, a single folded sheet. A shopping list. Nothing more. Just, "Need milk, paper towels. Check for Ava's SAT practice. Amount enclosed. No, please. No, thank you. Not even a signature." Maggie folded it back up, slipped it into the ledger like one last forgotten receipt. Then she reached for her phone and scrolled to Sam. Her thumb hovered over call. She didn't need to say much, just enough to set the next piece in motion. It started with a single post on a Wednesday morning. Hannah's profile picture glowed at the top of the feed. Matching holiday sweaters, her arm around Ava, captioned with something harmless enough to slip under the radar. But this one wasn't harmless. Sometimes people forget who's been there for them until the checks stop coming. Some of us were raised to give, others to take. Sad it runs in the family. By noon, 46 people had reacted. Mostly the same circle from the church choir and old PTA committees. Polite emojis, thinly veiled curiosity. By 3 o'clock, the comments had turned speculative. "Hope everything's okay, hun. Family can be tough. You deserve peace." And then one from Eloise. "Should we list the reasons alphabetically?" The comment sat there, clean and sharp, no emoji to dull it. Within an hour, it was gone, deleted. But not before 10 people had liked it, and 2 had screenshotted the exchange. That evening, Hannah scrolled through her notifications. Cheeks hot, pulse racing. Her follower count hadn't dropped, but the likes had. Her old church friends, the ones who'd once lined up beside her at bake sales and charity runs, were suddenly quiet. No hearts, no comments, just silence. Even Pastor Jean's wife had untagged her in the women's ministry event photo. She slammed her phone down, muttering under her breath, "Petty. They're all petty." Matthew looked up from his tablet. "What did you post?" "Nothing bad." He raised an eyebrow. Apparently bad enough. "I just told the truth. She's freezing us out and everyone needs to know why." Matthew sighed. "You just gave them something to talk about." As if on cue, his phone buzzed. A text from a coworker. "Hey man, didn't your wife's mom help you guys with the mortgage? What happened?" Then another. "Office gossip says your in-laws cut you off. True?" Matthew's jaw tightened. He set the phone face down and rubbed his temple. "I told you not to make it public," he said quietly. Hannah crossed her arms. "She embarrassed us first." "No," he said. "She just stopped paying our bills." Across town, Maggie sat on her back porch, a blanket over her knees, the evening's gold light thinning across the yard. She'd seen the post. Sam had sent her a screenshot before she could stumble across it herself. She hadn't read it twice. Once was enough. Maggie didn't comment, didn't defend, didn't even block Hannah. Let the silence speak. Inside, her laptop chimed with a confirmation email from the Lakeside Literacy Project. Donation, $15,000. Anonymous. She stared at the number, at the way it fit so neatly in the space where resentment could have lived. The money would sponsor adult reading programs, fund materials for GED tutoring, buy books for classrooms. All the places where giving still meant something. She clicked confirm and closed the browser. A different kind of peace settled over her, not triumph, not even satisfaction, just steadiness. Later that night, Eloise called. "I might have stirred the pot a little," she said. "I know," Maggie replied. "You used the alphabet line." Eloise laughed softly. "I shouldn't have, but I couldn't resist. You said what I didn't need to." "She's spiraling, Maggie. Let her. It's her turn to trip over her own story." There was a pause, long and comfortable. Eloise finally asked, "Do you regret not setting the record straight?" Maggie shook her head, though Eloise couldn't see it. No one who mattered believed her anyway. Eloise exhaled. "Then we're fine." They said goodnight. Around 11, Maggie's phone buzzed again. "Ava, I miss you. No emojis, no punctuation. Just the rawness of it." Maggie's throat tightened. She typed, erased, then typed again. "I'm here. Always." She hovered over send, the cursor blinking like a heartbeat. Then she paused. She thought of Hannah's post, the noise it had created, the quiet dignity she'd earned by refusing to answer it. Finally, she deleted the message and wrote something smaller. "Sleep well, sweetheart." Then she hit send. Outside, rain began to fall, thin, steady, cleansing. It streaked the window, tracing crooked paths down the glass. Maggie watched it from the porch doorway, a cup of tea warming her hands. Across town, Hannah sat awake at her dining table, her laptop open to an empty bank portal, the cursor blinking where her mother's name used to be. No deposits, no safety net. Just a growing silence and a feed full of ghosts. Maggie sipped her tea, the faintest tremor of sadness flickering through her chest, but she didn't turn away from it. She let it pass through, clean and unresisted. Then her phone buzzed once more. Not a text. A new email alert. Subject, notice of inquiry. Local news. Feature request. The sender's line read, Lakeside Literacy Project Media Relations. Maggie stared at the screen. They wanted to feature their anonymous donor. The letter came certified. Notice of intent to repossess. Sealed in that stiff kind of envelope banks favor. The kind that never carries anything soft. Hannah stood at the kitchen counter, rereading the bolded words at the top. The Toyota Highlander, the family car, the one Maggie had co-signed for 7 years ago, when Ava was still small enough to need a booster seat and Hannah's credit was just starting to rot. She'd made the payments, mostly, enough to keep it from default. But now the gaps had caught up. 3 missed months. 2 late fees. The dealership was done being patient, and Maggie's name was still on the loan. Matthew walked in halfway through her third read. "What is it?" She handed him the notice with trembling fingers. "It's the car." He scanned it. "They're threatening repo?" She nodded. "If we can't bring it current by the 15th. He leaned against the fridge. "Can you call your mom?" Hannah swallowed. Her phone sat on the table, screen blank, no new messages. Maggie hadn't replied to anything in over 2 weeks. Not even the urgent email she'd sent the night before, begging to talk. "I'll go over," she said quietly, "maybe face to face." The knock came just after dusk. Maggie opened the door but didn't step aside. She wore a long navy cardigan and house shoes, one hand resting lightly against the doorframe. Her eyes were unreadable, calm in the way a locked room is calm. "Mama," Hannah began, forcing a small, tight smile. "Can I come in?" Maggie didn't move. "I'd rather not stand on ceremony tonight." Hannah's breath hitched. "It's about the car." Maggie said nothing. "I know it's still in your name. The dealership sent something, some paperwork. I didn't know we were behind that bad. I swear." Maggie tilted her head slightly. "You didn't know or you didn't look." Hannah blinked. "It's just been a hard couple of months. With school fees, and Matthew's hours got cut again, and I'm not here for excuses," Maggie said, voice even. "Can you at least help us keep the car?" Hannah's voice cracked. "It's how Ava gets to school. It's how I get to work." Maggie let the silence linger before replying. Then, finally, freedom comes with cost. Pay it. That was all. No fury. No speech. Just the sentence. The sentence that didn't bend. She closed the door gently. On the porch, Hannah stood frozen, her arms hanging useless at her sides, eyes burning with something between panic and disbelief. At Maggie's kitchen table, Sam slid the last form across the wood. "You sure you want this on record?" he asked, his voice low but not hesitant. "I do. This severs all residual liability," he said. "If they default and the car goes, the damage hits them only. You walk away clean." Maggie signed without a blink. Sam reached for the folder, but she stopped him. "Let it sit a minute," she said. "I want to feel the weight of it." So they sat. One mother, one son, one paper exorcism between them. 3 mornings later, Ava stood by the curb, her backpack slung heavy over both shoulders. No car idling, no quick honk. No air-conditioned seat waiting, just her. The Highlander had been gone when she woke up, towed during the night, its absence as silent as it was final. No one had explained. No one had really needed to, so she walked. 14 blocks, 2 crosswalks, 1 cracked sidewalk that always collected rain. She passed a bus stop where 2 of her classmates laughed behind their phones. One of them pointed. Ava adjusted her hood and kept walking. It was a long walk, not painful, just different, lonelier. Back at home, Hannah stared out the window, watching her daughter's figure shrink against the cold November light. "She shouldn't have to do this," she muttered. Matthew didn't reply. "She's punishing us through her." Still, no answer. "Say something," Hannah snapped. Matthew sipped his coffee. "You're the one who posted about her." "I was defending us." "No," he said. "You were trying to shame her into giving again. It didn't work." Hannah crossed her arms. "I just want things back to normal." Matthew looked at her, really looked at her for the first time in weeks. "What if this is the new normal?" Hannah turned away, but his words stuck. Because somewhere, in the part of her mind she never said out loud, she knew. The car wasn't the only thing that had been repossessed. Control had too. Across town, Maggie sat beside the fireplace, feeding a fresh log into the flames. The severance form was tucked in a file under her hand. Next to it, a small box, Ava's spare key to the Highlander. Returned in the mail without a note. Maggie opened her journal. She didn't write often now, just enough to hold clarity. She wrote 1 line. She asked for the car. I kept my name. Then closed the journal, placed the pen on top, and stood. The doorbell rang. She opened it to find Ava there again, hood up, cheeks pink, socks damp from the walk. "I brought you something," Ava said, holding out a small folded piece of notebook paper. Maggie opened it. Inside, in Ava's uneven print, "Thank you for letting me walk. Not everyone gets to learn how." The envelope was thick, heavy with finality. Maggie laid it on the center of the dining table like a playing card, face down. Its presence louder than the ticking clock behind her. It was done. Witnessed. Notarized. Reviewed. Filed. And most importantly, unbreakable. Sam had walked it through every loop, every vulnerable clause that a desperate child might try to exploit. Maggie's signature had been recorded on video, her capacity verified by both a doctor and a court officer. There would be no claims of confusion, coercion, or diminished memory. The estate plan now stood like steel. Hannah's name was gone from every corner. The door wasn't just closed, it was sealed. The legal challenge came by email, not through a lawyer, but a cheap e-form submission to the court, filed late on a Sunday night. A motion to contest. Hannah had cited emotional distress, suspicious timing, and elder influence. It never made it past the clerk. By Tuesday morning, the motion was marked. Denied, insufficient grounds to proceed. Sam texted a screenshot to Maggie with a single line. Fortress held. Maggie didn't reply immediately. She read the ruling twice, then turned her phone face down. Her tea had gone cold beside her. Later that afternoon, the real response came. A text from Hannah. "This isn't over. I'm your daughter." Maggie stared at the screen. Her thumb hovered for a long time. She read the message aloud to herself slowly, as if trying to feel each word land in her bones. Then finally she wrote back, "I know, that's why it hurts." And that was it. No explanation, no defense, just the truth. Heavy, spare, irreversible. She turned her phone off. Eloise came by that evening, 2 grocery bags in hand and a look on her face like she was ready to fight God in the driveway. "Contest got thrown out," she said, setting the milk and bread on the counter. "Fastest denial I've ever seen." She didn't even use a lawyer, Maggie said. She thought her name would be enough. Eloise opened a box of crackers, poured them into a bowl like it was ritual. They always think blood entitles them, like biology is currency. Maggie leaned against the counter. "She's still my daughter." "I know," Eloise said. "You can love someone and still revoke their access." Maggie closed her eyes for a moment. "That line's going to echo for a while." Eloise shrugged. "Let it. You've echoed for them long enough." They sat at the table without turning on the TV. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable. It was necessary. After Eloise left, Maggie opened the drawer beneath her desk and pulled out a new folder. The label on the tab read, "Ava Trust, Independent and Irrevocable." She clicked open her laptop and logged into the secure portal Sam had set up the week before. No co-signers, no oversight, no loopholes. The trust would activate in 2 stages. Ava's 18th birthday and again at 22, college support. First apartment, medical costs, car insurance, if she ever wanted to try again with one. Maggie funded it with a lump transfer. The account pinged as it cleared, numbers climbing into 5 digits. It was the kind of gift Hannah would have called too complicated. But Ava would understand it. Not today, maybe not even next year, but someday. Outside, the wind had picked up again. It howled around the corners of the house, trying to slip in through seams that had long since been sealed. Maggie walked to the door and checked the lock. Then, on instinct, she stepped onto the porch. The mailbox flag was up. She hadn't sent anything. Inside the box, a single envelope, no return address, postmarked locally. Maggie opened it beneath the porch light. A printed flyer, a youth fundraiser. Ava's name listed 3rd among the student speakers. A hand-drawn star marked the margin. Ava's handwriting, unmistakable. She smiled, folded it gently, slid it into the inside pocket of her cardigan. Then she stepped back inside, shut the door, and turned the bolt. An hour later, Hannah sat alone in the parking lot of the courthouse, the rejection notice still open on her phone. Her eyes were red. She hadn't slept. Her appeal had been her last shot. In the passenger seat, Matthew watched her. "You tried," he said quietly. Hannah didn't answer. Behind her eyes, the world was rearranging itself. The will was real. The door was shut. She hadn't just lost money. She'd lost entitlement, history, the myth that her mother's love would always override her choices. She had underestimated the quiet girl Maggie used to be. The one who never raised her voice. The one who always picked up. The one who gave and gave and gave. She wasn't that woman anymore, and Hannah had waited too long to notice. Across town, Maggie reopened her journal. Tonight she wrote 2 lines. She said it isn't over, but for me, it is. She paused, then underlined it. The whisper started slow, like a thread pulled loose at the edge of a sweater. It was the pastor's wife who said it first, at the end of a Thursday fellowship supper while stacking folding chairs. Just a passing comment, low-voiced, like she wasn't even sure she should be saying it. "You know the Smith Family Scholarship? Maggie funded it. 20 years. By Sunday, the whole sanctuary knew. It turned out Maggie had been writing anonymous checks under a church account name since before Ava was born. School supplies, rent subsidies, medical co-pays, the scholarship for single moms going back to community college. Hers, the food pantry delivery van. Her signature sat at the bottom of the DMV registration. No one had ever guessed. But once her name surfaced, there was a kind of emotional recalibration. Faces softening, memories reshuffling, moments once attributed to divine timing, suddenly traced to the quiet woman who always slipped out the back door after service. That morning, when her name was read from the pulpit, in gratitude for 2 decades of generosity, quiet and constant, Maggie didn't stand. She didn't need to. The applause wasn't for attention. It was recognition. A reckoning. Eloise grinned like she'd been sitting on the secret for years. About damn time, she whispered, nudging Maggie's arm. But not everyone clapped. Hannah and Matthew sat stiff in the second-to-last pew. Their smiles held tight at the corners, the kind that cracked under pressure. After the service, they slipped out early, avoiding eye contact. Heads slightly bowed like maybe, just maybe. They felt the temperature shift in the room. By the next month, they'd stopped coming altogether, and people noticed. A few asked where they'd gone. No answers came, but the absence said more than any excuse could have. The woman whose mother had paid for half the town's kids to finish high school and tried to sue her over a will? No one said it out loud. They didn't have to. In a place where everyone remembers everything, silence is louder than scandal. Meanwhile, Ava kept walking. She came into the church on Sundays just before the first hymn and left before the final prayer. She didn't smile much. She didn't linger. Her eyes stayed down, hands stuffed in the sleeves of her sweatshirt. Always a little too big for her. But she came. That was something. One morning, after the service, Maggie walked out and found an envelope tucked under her windshield wiper. Inside, a youth event flyer. Ava had underlined 2 lines in blue pen. Attendance mandatory for all speakers and dress respectfully. No hoodies. No note. Just those lines, underlined hard. It was the closest thing to a message she'd gotten since the fundraiser flyer. That night, Maggie sat at her kitchen table, letter paper in front of her. Her handwriting slow and deliberate. Ava, some people fail us. We don't have to fail back. The enclosed card works for any bus line in the city. Use it for whatever gets you where you want to go. No tracking, no expectations. M. She sealed the envelope and added a pressed wildflower between the folds, Queen Anne's lace from the backyard. She had no idea if Ava would keep it, but something about the fragility of it felt honest. By the end of the week, she saw Ava at the bus stop across from the library. No eye contact, no smile, but the card was in her hand. That was enough. Later that weekend, Eloise showed up again. This time, no groceries. Just a deep dish peach pie, steaming in a foil tin, crust golden and crackling at the edge. She left it on the porch with a note scrawled in Sharpie on a napkin. You can smile now. It's okay. And Maggie carried it inside, holding it like something fragile. She set it on the counter and stood there, hands braced on the edge of the granite. She didn't cry. She didn't even sit. She just breathed for the first time in what felt like weeks. Outside, wind stirred the branches again, but this time, no storm followed. The world had grown quiet around her, not hollow, just still, a kind of afterburn, like the house had finally settled into its new frame. She poured 2 mugs of tea, habit, and drank both. That night, Maggie flipped open her journal again. But before pen touched page, her phone buzzed. A number she didn't recognize. No name, no message, just a missed call. Then another. Then silence. When she called it back, a mechanical voice answered. This number is no longer in service. She stared at the screen, her thumb frozen midair. Then, at midnight, another text arrived. Just 4 words. You really chose her. Maggie stared at it. This time, she didn't turn her phone off. She turned the porch light on instead, and waited. The knock came at dusk, soft, like the kind you make when you're not sure if you'll be let in. Maggie didn't flinch. She'd been sitting on the couch, hands wrapped around the warmth of a mug gone lukewarm. Porch light still burning from the night before. She opened the door slowly, uncertain of what would be on the other side. Ava stood on the mat, backpack slung over one shoulder, hoodie zipped to her throat, eyes glassy but steady. She didn't step forward, didn't smile, didn't explain, just asked, barely above a whisper, "Is it okay if I stay for a bit?" Maggie didn't speak. She just nodded and stepped aside. The house seemed to adjust itself around Ava, air shifting, walls settling again. She left her shoes by the door without being told, patted inside like it wasn't her first time, which it wasn't, and dropped her backpack gently by the hall table. "I'll get the guest room ready," Maggie said, voice low, almost level. "The sheets are clean, just need to air it out." Ava followed quietly, her steps smaller than usual. Maggie pushed open the door to the room at the end of the hall, the one she used to keep closed. The mattress was still firm, the window cracked to keep the air from going stale. She tugged open the curtains, let the last of the evening light in, and paused at the desk in the corner. Her old writing desk. Sturdy, unmoved. "I can clear this off," Maggie said, running a hand along the edge. "Or, you can use it if you want. For school or whatever." Ava ran her fingers along the drawer handles. "You used to sit here," she said softly, "before dinner when you needed quiet." Maggie didn't answer, she just nodded. They cooked together that night, silently at first. Maggie pulled out pasta and garlic. Ava chopped tomatoes like she'd done it 100 times. They didn't speak much, but there was no tension. Just the steady rhythm of motion, of presence, of being near enough to feel something soft begin to settle. Maggie stirred the sauce while Ava set the table. 2 plates, 2 glasses of water, a folded paper towel between them like a centerpiece. Halfway through eating, Maggie set her fork down and looked across the table. "I need you to hear something," she said. "And I need to say it once, so we don't bury it under 1,000 other moments." Ava didn't move, just looked up. "You don't owe me sides," Maggie said. "You don't owe me some performance of loyalty just because she's your mother. You owe yourself peace. If being here gives you even a slice of that, I won't question it. But don't stay out of guilt." Ava's throat moved like she was swallowing something heavy. She didn't reply, but she stayed. After the dishes were washed, she went to the guest room, unpacked nothing, but changed into clean clothes and curled into the bed sideways, like she hadn't decided whether she was staying yet. Maggie didn't press her. She just let the porch light burn a while longer. The next morning, she called Sam. "I need a change made to the trust," Maggie said, flipping through her notes while looking out the kitchen window. "No more staggered disbursements. No conditional triggers. She's the direct beneficiary now." Sam didn't push back. "All of it?" "All of it. And if she leaves with it." There was a silence on the line, but not a judgmental one, just professional. "I'll send the amendment draft this afternoon." By 3 p.m., it was signed and filed. Maggie uploaded it to the secure folder and didn't say a word about it to Ava. Not yet. Some truths needed room to bloom before they were handed over. That night, just before bed, Maggie checked her voicemail. One new message. She stared at the screen before pressing play. "It's me," Hannah's voice, already fraying at the edges. "I know you think you're being noble, but this is manipulative. She's a kid. She doesn't understand what you're doing, how this is going to ruin everything we've worked for. You're creating division. You're making her choose. And one day, she's going to see through you. And when she does, don't expect her to stay." Silence followed, then the mechanical end beep. Maggie sat down on the edge of the bed, phone still in her hand. She didn't delete the message, didn't save it either, just let it hang in the space between noise and meaning. Down the hall, a door creaked open. Soft footsteps. Ava appeared in the doorway, blanket draped over her shoulders. "I had a dream I was being chased," she said, blinking like the fear hadn't quite worn off yet. Maggie reached out, pulled back the covers on the far side of her bed. "Then don't go back to it," she said. "Not tonight." Ava climbed in. No words, no hesitation, just warmth. As they lay there in the dark, Maggie finally whispered. She called. Ava was quiet for a long beat, then just loud enough to break the air. "So did I." Maggie turned her head. "What?" But Ava didn't answer. She just closed her eyes. And for the first time in months, she slept without flinching. Maggie deleted her voicemail first. Not just the message, the app, the archive, the number itself. By the end of the week, the landline was disconnected, and her cell plan transferred to a new number, unlisted, untraceable. She updated only 2 people, Sam and Eloise. No one else, no forwarding address, no friendly, just in case. There was no rage in it, just release. It felt oddly like pruning, cutting back what would never bloom so something else might. That Friday, Ava stayed after school to help organize a tutoring schedule for the public library's fall session. It started small, a flyer, a few after-school kids, a sign-up sheet by the community corkboard. But then a teacher mentioned her in a staff meeting. Word got around. By October, she was leading twice-weekly sessions for younger students, math and reading. Always with sleeves pushed up and hair tied back, marker smudges on her fingers. At home, she still kept quiet. But it wasn't the same silence. This one was full of motion, music drifting from her room while she studied, the hum of the washing machine running with her clothes, the rhythm of her soft footsteps when she walked through the kitchen late at night for cereal. She used Maggie's desk like it belonged to her. And maybe it did now. Maggie kept her distance in all the right ways. But some nights, when the house was still and the wind outside ran soft fingers along the window panes, she found herself standing in Ava's doorway, just long enough to see her there, sleeping on her side, arms tucked beneath her cheek like a child who'd survived a storm. She whispered it once, barely audible even to herself. "You saved me too." Then she closed the door, gentle and slow, so the latch wouldn't catch. A week later, a letter arrived. No return address, postmarked out of state. The handwriting was unmistakable, tight cursive, every line deliberate. Maggie stood with it in her hand for 5 full minutes by the mailbox. The paper was thick, expensive. The kind of envelope meant to carry something meant to hurt, dressed up like it wasn't. She walked back inside, opened a kitchen drawer, and pulled out a Sharpie, returned to sender. She didn't even break the seal. She dropped it in the outgoing mail tray and poured herself a cup of coffee like it was any other morning. When Ava came home that evening, she saw the envelope, marked up, face down, ready to disappear. She didn't ask. Instead, she dropped her backpack by the door and walked into the kitchen, pulling a leftover sandwich from the fridge. She stood there, half-unwrapped bite in her hand, and said casually, "It's weird, but I don't miss them." Maggie glanced up from her crossword. Ava didn't clarify, didn't name them, didn't need to. She just folded the sandwich back into its foil, slid it onto a plate, and sat across from Maggie at the table. There was no ceremony in it, no grief, just the quiet observation of a girl who had taken stock of her heart and found more peace in its silence than in its noise. Maggie wanted to say something, but the words stayed stuck behind her ribs. So instead, she reached for a second mug, poured tea the way Ava liked it, honey, no lemon, and slid it across the table. They ate in silence, but it was full, lived in, honest. Later that night, Maggie returned to the fireplace drawer where she kept the few photos that had survived the last 3 decades. She pulled out one, Hannah at 13, arms crossed, chin high like she'd already decided the world owed her something. Maggie studied the picture for a long time. Then she put it back and didn't feel guilty. Just then, a buzz echoed from the front porch. Not a knock, not a voice. The motion sensor light had kicked on. Maggie froze. Ava, barefoot, appeared in the hall. "Did you hear that?" Maggie held up a hand, quiet. She stepped to the front window, careful not to let her shadow fall across the glass. Outside, something sat at the edge of the porch light. Not someone, something, a box, wrapped in plain brown paper. No label. Maggie unlocked the door but didn't open it. Ava stood behind her now, watching, waiting. "I'll get it," Maggie said. But Ava touched her arm. "No," she said. "Let me." And without waiting for permission, Ava stepped forward, turned the handle, and crossed the threshold, barefoot, calm, unshaken. Behind her, Maggie whispered only one word. "Careful." The microphone was temperamental, buzzing faintly at first, then falling silent like it was still deciding whether Maggie deserved to be heard. She waited. Let it crackle, let it settle. The folding chairs in the library's community room were filled mostly with women. Half of them young, the rest aging with their hands, faces, and stories. A few were still in their scrubs. Some had strollers by their knees. All of them looked curious, guarded, but open. Maggie adjusted the mic and cleared her throat, her notes folded neatly in her hand but untouched. "My name is Maggie Lindstrom," she began. "And for a long time, I thought saying yes made me generous." A small silence followed. Then she smiled, the kind that didn't ask for approval. "I was wrong." A few heads lifted. She went on. "Yes is a beautiful thing when it's real, but sometimes it's a survival reflex. A peacekeeping tool. A debt we think we owe to people who should have paid us with kindness and didn't. She paused. Let it breathe. I'm not a financial expert. I don't have a degree in money management. But I do know what it means to give everything you have, time, savings, self, because someone told you that love meant never holding back. And I know what it feels like to realize, too late, that they were only keeping score. A few women leaned forward now. Maggie straightened the stack of notes she wasn't reading. So tonight I'm here to say something simple. Something I wish someone had told me 30 years ago. She looked them in the eyes, each row. No is a financial decision. That landed. Not like applause. More like air being let into a room that had been sealed too long. You don't owe your labor to your guilt, she continued. You don't owe your money to people who only remember you when they want something. You don't owe your house to anyone who bangs on your door with entitlement instead of respect. One woman, maybe mid-30s, let out a small almost involuntarily. Maggie smiled toward her. You can say no. You can keep the account in your name. You can cut someone off and still sleep at night. That's not cruelty. That's stewardship. It's choosing to survive with margin. It's saying, I'm not going to go bankrupt so someone else can stay irresponsible. When she finally stopped, there was silence. Then someone clapped. Then a dozen more. And then women began to speak, asking questions, sharing moments, lifting their own voices in the small but rising current that always followed a truth laid bare. By the end of the hour, Maggie had answered every question they threw at her, even the hard ones, especially the ones that sounded like guilt. When the session ended, Ava met her by the door, holding her coat. You didn't read your notes, she said, one eyebrow raised. I didn't need to, Maggie replied. They stepped out into the cold together, but neither of them shivered. 3 days later, the article hit Facebook. Local lifestyle blog, circulation under 10,000, but enough. Local woman took back her name, one ledger at a time. There was a picture of Maggie at the podium, her hand caught mid-gesture, face lit by something more than the library fluorescence. The quote beneath it read, Saying no doesn't make you cold. It makes you solvent. It was shared 47 times in the first afternoon. Enough for it to find its way to Hannah's feed. She was sitting at the kitchen table, scrolling with one hand, the other cradling a mug she hadn't touched in an hour. When she saw the photo, her jaw locked. She made it about her, she muttered. Matthew looked up from his tablet. Looks like she made it about surviving. Hannah turned the screen toward him. She knew what this would do. She wants people to know. It's calculated. Matthew studied the article, then said quietly, You burned that bridge. Hannah didn't blink. She lit it first, and that was the thing. She meant it. There was no wavering in her tone, no doubt in her posture. But there was something in her eyes, a flicker at the edges, like a woman beginning to realize that when you torch a bridge you never thought you'd need again. You'd better be damn sure you know how to swim. She reached for her phone, stared at the contact list. Maggie's number was still there, but when she tapped it, this contact is no longer available. She slammed the phone down, too hard, and the mug beside it tipped, spilling coffee across the table. Matthew didn't move. He just watched the mess spread, and said, low and final, She's not coming back, Hannah. The letter came on thick linen paper, folded 3 times, hand-delivered by a woman in a denim jacket and sensible boots, who introduced herself as Maureen from the Preservation Society. Maggie met her on the porch, wiping her hands on a dish towel. The sky behind them was low and gray, like it was deciding whether to rain or just brood for the afternoon. We've done a lot of talking, Maureen said, tapping the folder lightly against her palm. And we think your home qualifies, not just as a historic structure, but as a living archive. The kind people don't just visit, but return to. The stories matter here, and so does what you did with it. Maggie looked at her for a long moment. This house has 50 years of my footprints in it, she said quietly. You sure you want to let the public start tracking in their own? Maureen smiled. We don't want to take it. We want to honor it. Later, when Ava got home from the library, Maggie laid the letter on the kitchen table between 2 mugs of tea. Hers, still steeping. Ava's already half drunk. Ava read the whole thing without speaking, then ran her fingers along the Preservation Society's embossed seal at the bottom. You're doing it? She asked. I'm considering it, Maggie said. But they'd need renovation funds. Not a ton, but enough. They want to rewire the back hallway, patch the porch, restore the woodwork in the upstairs bedrooms. Ava looked up. Use the trust. Maggie raised an eyebrow. You sure? She asked. You're the one it belongs to now. Ava nodded, simple and sure. If a house can survive this long and still be generous, it deserves to keep standing. By December, scaffolding went up across the back porch. Electricians ran quiet drills through the hall closet. 2 contractors from the county started cataloging original fixtures: cabinet handles, doorknobs, floor vents stamped with dates. The team decided to keep the wallpaper in the guest room, faded roses and all. Character, one of them said. You can't fake that. One room on the main floor was designated for something special: a financial literacy tutoring space. Bookshelves, a reading nook, and a desk where kids could get help with everything from bank statements to FAFSA forms. Ava picked the paint color, soft slate blue, and worked weekends to sort the donations. She made laminated signs, alphabetized pamphlets, and installed a whiteboard on the far wall. When it was done, she stood in the doorway beside Maggie, arms crossed and proud. She taught me how to track spending on notebook paper, Ava said to one of the docents who'd come to preview the space. The same way she learned, she wanted me to know that not everything worth learning comes with a login or a fee. Across the hall, Eloise arrived with her usual flair, carrying a tray of mini muffins and a thermos of strong coffee like she was attending both a ceremony and a stakeout. She walked room to room, whispering things Maggie couldn't hear, pausing in doorways, smiling with her mouth and her eyes. When she reached the main living room, she stopped short. On the mantel, a newly framed photograph stood alone. It was black and white, Maggie, early 40s, standing on a ladder, hair tied back, paint roller in one hand. A look on her face like she'd just finished saving something no one else had noticed was worth keeping. The caption below read, Maggie Reeves, Builder in Silence. Eloise stared at it for a long time, then wiped at her eyes with the back of her wrist and laughed, wet and sudden. You finally got your name back, she said. Maggie didn't look at the photo, just sipped her coffee. I never lost it, she said. They just covered it for a while. Ava, standing nearby, didn't speak. She just reached out, took Maggie's hand, and squeezed. The last of the sunlight poured through the lace curtains, brushing against the walls like it remembered where everything used to hang. Maggie exhaled, long and steady. Not relief, something older, something earned. Then from the entryway, the doorbell rang. Everyone turned. No one moved. Maggie set her mug down, slow. Ava's fingers tensed slightly around hers. Eloise raised an eyebrow. You expecting someone? She asked. Maggie shook her head and walked toward the front door. The house didn't creak, didn't warn, just watched. It started as a whisper on the church bulletin board, tucked between casserole sign-ups and prayer requests. Foreclosure proceedings, 214 Orchard Lane. A legal printout, taped neatly, small as a death notice. Ava saw it on a Wednesday. She'd walked into the lobby to hang a flyer for the library's winter tutoring sessions, already thinking about the decimal system and whether they had enough pencils. But the notice stopped her. She stared at it only long enough to confirm what she already suspected. The address was Hannah's. The house with the wrought iron fence and the swing set no one touched anymore. The one with hydrangeas that used to bloom so bright they looked artificial. No one was whispering about it yet, but they would. She didn't say a word. Not to Maggie, not to Eloise, not even to herself when she lay awake that night with her earbuds in, music low, the edges of old grief tugging like static. Instead, she went home, reheated soup, and asked Maggie if they could buy stamps. Across the street, on a quieter block where the houses leaned closer to each other for warmth, a woman named Carla had just come home from the hospital with a newborn and a second eviction warning. She was 32, no partner, 2 jobs, 0 margin. Maggie heard about it from the librarian, an offhand comment while checking out a copy of Nickel and Dimed for Ava. She was crying in the reading room, the librarian said, trying to decide between diapers and groceries. I didn't know what to say. Maggie nodded gently. You don't have to say anything. Just make sure she checks out under her name. That evening, Maggie sat at her desk, logged into the Trust Secure portal, and selected one-time disbursement. She filled in Carla's name and account number. A modest amount, enough for 2 months of rent and a stocked fridge. She sent it anonymously, under the alias used back when she funded pantry vans and GED classes. When Ava passed Carla a flyer the next day, "We've got free tutoring at the house if your niece ever wants help." Carla smiled without flinching. She didn't know where the deposit had come from. She just said, "Thank you," and looked like maybe she could breathe again. Meanwhile, Sam was wrapping the final draft of Ava's college funding documents. He sent the updated file in a secure envelope, along with a short handwritten note. "Funded in full, unrestricted use. Congratulations, Ava. You earned every bit of this." Ava opened it on the front porch in her socks, sitting on the steps with her knees pulled up and the winter sun soft on her face. She didn't cry. She just held the envelope for a long time, then tucked it into the front of her journal and went inside to make Maggie tea. A week later, a GoFundMe started circulating. "Help us keep our family home. Every dollar counts." The photo was old. Ava recognized it immediately. Hannah on the porch, arm around Matthew, both smiling wide and unaware that time was already winding down behind them. The story beneath it was written in Hannah's voice. Hard times. Unexpected legal barriers, family estrangement. Please share. It hinted at betrayal without naming names, framed victimhood like it was currency. Donations trickled in. A couple $100. A few comments from cousins they never spoke to anymore. One passive-aggressive share from a woman Maggie hadn't spoken to since the church bake sale in 2008. Maggie saw the link in her email, forwarded by someone who thought she might want to know. She didn't click, didn't open the page, didn't screenshot or forward or breathe life into it in any way. She marked the message read and deleted it. No hesitation, no second glance. The thing about fires, she'd learned, is that they want oxygen, and Maggie had learned to stop giving them air. One night, Ava came downstairs in her robe, unable to sleep. She found Maggie at the dining room table, receipts and ledgers laid out like an old ritual. She didn't interrupt, just sat beside her, watching her balance columns by hand, the way she always had. Ava picked up a pen and filled in a number without being asked. They worked in tandem, quiet and steady. At one point, Ava looked up and said, "You know they think we're being cruel." Maggie didn't flinch. "I know. They're probably telling people we're letting them drown." Maggie's eyes stayed on the numbers. "They've been swimming in a straight line toward the deep end for years." Ava didn't push, just nodded and went back to the ledger. But later, just before bed, she asked, "Do you ever feel tempted to help?" Maggie paused at the top of the stairs. "I did," she said, "until I realized they only wanted help if it came with permission to blame me afterward." Ava didn't reply. But as she turned off the hallway light, she whispered, "Same." And down the block, in the quiet dark of a house with a listing price nobody would meet, Hannah hit refresh again. The donation total hadn't changed. The hug came without ceremony. Ava had been sorting library returns on the living room rug, stacks of picture books and well-worn paperbacks spread in lazy spirals, when Maggie passed by with a basket of folded laundry. Ava stood, reached out, held her like she hadn't since the night she came to the door asking for a place to stay. Maggie froze at first, not startled, just still. Then she breathed into it, arms folding around Ava's back like a muscle she'd been afraid to flex too soon. "They called you a burden," Ava whispered, voice muffled against her shoulder. "But you carried me." Maggie didn't respond, not with words. She just pressed her cheek to Ava's temple and held on a little longer. That weekend, she updated her documents. She sat at the desk after sunset, reading glasses low on her nose, pages fanned out like old blueprints. The trust, the living will, the healthcare directive. Sam had already marked the signature lines. No more clauses, no more contingencies, no more ghosts written into the fine print. Just one name now, Ava's. She signed with a pen Eloise had given her 3 years ago, a gift back when Maggie still second-guessed every decision that cost her peace. The ink bled a little at the tail of the M, but it felt like closure, not mess. She slid the pages into the fireproof folder and closed it without flinching. When she finished, she made herself a cup of mint tea, then sat by the window, watching Frost begin to trace delicate ferns across the glass. It was done. There was nothing left to argue over. No doors someone could kick in after the fact. The wind wasn't loud, but it held. The next day, Eloise showed up, coat unzipped, cheeks pink from the cold, bearing a flat, wrapped parcel under one arm. "I didn't bake," she announced. "This time, I framed something." She set the package on the kitchen table and peeled back the brown paper like it was a magic trick. Inside, cream cardstock, gold foil, the words centered and clean. "Let the takers take themselves." Maggie stared at it, then laughed, quiet, a little breathless. Eloise poured herself coffee like she'd earned it. "Figured it's the kind of thing you should see every day. Right next to the stove, maybe, or above the thermostat. Somewhere central." "It's perfect," Maggie said. "It's earned," Eloise replied. That evening, Maggie hosted a dinner. Not an event, not an occasion. Just 4 chairs and 4 names that had stayed: Ava, Eloise, Sam, and one of the new tutors from the library, a quiet girl with good posture and kind eyes. The table was simple: roast chicken, potatoes, fresh rolls in a towel-lined bowl, water with lemon slices, even though it was winter. Maggie wore a soft sweater and her hair in a braid. No speeches, no toasts, just laughter that filled the corners of the house like it had always belonged there. When the plates were cleared and dessert set down, vanilla bean ice cream with cinnamon pear compote, Ava got up, walked to the fridge, and pressed a single sheet of paper beneath the magnet shaped like a daisy. The letterhead said Hollis College. The body said congratulations. The bottom said full academic scholarship. No one said anything at first. Maggie stared at it like it might evaporate. Her hand, resting on her cloth napkin, began to tremble. Eloise reached across the table, touched her wrist, and whispered, "You did it, Reeves." But Maggie didn't speak. She just stood, walked to the cabinet, pulled out 4 plates, and began setting the table again. For dessert, yes, but also for the life that was coming next. No tears, not yet, but her eyes were full as she poured coffee. That night, after everyone left and Ava went upstairs with her acceptance letter tucked in her notebook, Maggie sat at the table alone, hands resting palm flat on the wood. She whispered only once, but it echoed, "Let the takers take themselves." Then the wind rattled the porch railing. And for the first time in years, Maggie didn't check the lock. She just let the wind pass. Maggie walked the neighborhood just after dawn, coat unbuttoned, hands tucked into her sleeves. The wind was gentle, the kind that brushed your face without trying to change it. Maple leaves rattled at the curb. A crow watched from a fence post but didn't move. She passed the porch with the chipped green swing, the garden with its late-season mums, and the bus stop at the corner, where a boy in a puffer jacket kicked pebbles until the school bus turned the corner. Everything ordinary, everything intact. Her life, finally, among them. Ava was up early, hair pulled back tight, her bag packed before breakfast. She didn't say much, just moved through the morning like she already knew how to live somewhere else. Maggie poured coffee in a travel mug and slipped a granola bar into the front pocket of Ava's tote. Like muscle memory. The ride to the bus drop-off was short. Ava checked her phone twice. Maggie didn't ask who she was texting. When the charter bus pulled in, white with navy lettering and a small Hollis College seal near the back bumper, Ava stood. She didn't rush. She hugged Maggie once, arms secure, no desperation. "I'll call you when I get there." "I know." And then she boarded. Maggie watched the bus until it rounded the curve and disappeared behind the hill, taking with it 17 years of weight she hadn't realized she was strong enough to carry, not until now. She drove home with the windows down. The silence in the house didn't ache anymore. It didn't press in from the corners or ask to be filled. It simply was. Like the house had taken a long breath and finally let it out. She folded the linens from Ava's bed and stacked them in the hallway closet, watered the potted fern in the dining room, wrote the grocery list in her slanted, careful hand. And then, when the light shifted just enough to mean the day had truly begun, she walked into her office and opened her ledger one last time. The final page was clean. Just one column left, waiting. She picked up her pen, the same one that had carried her through each line. donations, deposits, disconnections, and wrote, in slow, deliberate letters, "Free, and so am I." Then she closed the book, tied the ribbon around it, and placed it in the drawer with everything that mattered. She made herself tea, peppermint, no honey, and carried it to the armchair by the window. The cup clinked softly as she set it down beside the small framed photo on the table. It was simple, her and Ava, shoulder to shoulder, both in sweaters, both smiling with their eyes. No one else in the frame, no one missing, no one erased, just chosen. She opened a book next, one Eloise had left weeks ago, with a sticky note that read, "You'll see why," and a smiley face that somehow felt like a wink. It was called What I Kept, a quiet memoir, spine-worn, sentences underlined by someone who knew what it meant to survive politely for too long. She read for a while, lost in it, until she got to the end. The final line hit like it had been waiting for her. "My daughter told her husband I was a burden they'd soon be free of." They were free indeed. Free from every dollar I ever gave them. Maggie stared at the page. She didn't cry. Didn't underline it. She just closed the book, steady, and whispered, "Exactly." The wind outside picked up again, not hard, just enough to lift the corners of the welcome mat. Maggie leaned back, tea cooling beside her, the photo catching the sun just right. The ledger was closed. The girl had gone. The peace had stayed. And this time, no one would be asking her for anything. The world could take what it wanted. She had kept what counted.